Today's video, we're going to talk about what percentage of your ad budget should be spent on remarketing. Yes, there always should be some, unless you're in a business, an emergency type business, for maximum profit margins. With that said, I would say 90+% of companies that we work with at our agency are using some kind of remarketing at behest of what we advise the client, and because it makes so much more money adding remarketing to your overall ad strategy than not having any remarketing at all. The average business owner does not value remarketing at all. They think spending all your money to attract new people to your website is the best value for your money, for your advertising budget that you can spend. The reality is, there's something called the power of sevens in marketing that says you'll make more money advertising to fewer people more times than you will advertising to more people, but only once each. There's a few exceptions, but that's generally, mostly always the case. And the better of job you do with your follow-up, the more sales you're gonna make, the more you're gonna scale your ad campaigns, because your ads are only gonna be so efficient when you only try to sell to people one time. A good analogy or equivalent to this is to say, if you're in a business where you generate leads, people call you or fill out the form, even if it's an e-commerce business for that matter. If you do not follow up your leads, you are not going to make nearly as many sales as if you do. We're talking half or less. Any truly polished salesperson knows this. That said, I've seen people where we've generated leads for them and their bonehead salespeople will call somebody up once, and if they don't answer, they just delete the lead, which is beyond retarded. Ultimately, that is the same. When you take that and apply it to advertising, it's the same exact thing. You cannot expect somebody to buy from you when you make one pass at them and then that's it. Maybe if it's a $20 broom that you either buy right away or not, you might start to have that argument, but even then it doesn't. It doesn't, because it costs a fraction of a penny to have an ad show up for somebody on Facebook, on YouTube, whatever, once they left the site, to where you're literally throwing away half the value of your traffic when you do no remarketing. And with that said, there's only so many people in market for your product or services every month. And instead of trying to find, how can we convince other people who are not in market to buy from us, you focus on your remarketing because that's the only rational thing to do. I'm going to talk about how to actually determine how much you should spend, if you should be doing it, and how to actually do it the way that we're doing to double the productivity of our ad budget, given that we're doing heavy remarketing on just about every client we work with, because it shows up in the numbers and we see it in terms of the revenue that is coming in. And I'll give you a couple case studies of different companies where we worked with, what percentages we spent there, so you understand how to apply this to your own business, like with what results they got as a company. So with that said, before I get into the content though, if you do not know who I am Corey Ziman, owner of Guaranteed PPC, an online advertising agency that specializes in guaranteeing results for their clients. That is, we do not charge our clients management fees until we can make them a certain minimum lift in the profitability, basically in excess of the management fees that we charge as an agency. We're the only agency out there who offers any kind of similar guarantee, which should tell you something about the quality of information that I'm sharing with you in today's video. So with that said, getting into the content. Now, depending on if you're an e-commerce business or non-e-commerce, as a general rule, dictate or determine what percentage of your overall ad budget gets spent just specifically on your remarketing approach itself. And this includes all advertising. So if you were doing, in other words, Google and Bing and Facebook, and you also did some direct mail, you did some billboards, all of it. Of your whole ad budget, you should be thinking about what percentage you should have ideally for remarketing, and then remarket in a bunch of different places. So this is the total remarketing to total ad spend that you have. For e-commerce businesses, we're typically at our agency going to be spending around 10% of our ad budget just on remarketing. Why only 10%? Well, for the most part in e-commerce, people are needing less information, less convincing to go ahead and put through a purchase versus somebody who is buying a multi-$1,000 product where you got to generate leads, or you're in general selling a service where people have less confidence in buying. Now, this is just a generalized rule, is in general what we're doing at our firm. And then for non-e-commerce, we're spending like 20% on average in terms of remarketing to not only get people back to the site and turn into a lead, which everybody thinks that's the only sole thing it's good for, if they think remarketing is actually valuable at all, which most people don't because they don't see the return on investment in it when they try it, and then they just give up on it completely. Also, it increases the closing rates on the leads that you got, which is the more important factor. Your closing rates will increase significantly when you have remarketing going on itself. So if you want to make it simple here, like 60% of the value of remarketing when you're generating leads is just in increasing your closing rates. Because there's what they call the sales cycle window, which is the average amount of time it takes for somebody to initially get in market to the time that they buy. And usually on lead generation campaigns you have on the front end, either people become a lead right away or they don't, and that's it. And then there's 2 to 4 weeks or whatever before they actually pull the trigger and buy on average. And the person who has ads going for them that whole time, when the day comes when they eventually are going to tell themselves, shoot, I cannot delay this purchase anymore, I have to pick someone today, you're the first person they think of, therefore your closing rate's higher because you followed up with them that whole time. And it only cost an extra 30 cents per person to do that kind of follow-up, which I'll explain why in a moment. But for e-commerce, the reason why it's more is because we want to actually make sure we're getting high closing rates. It's just like the analogy I gave before about salespeople, what they know about following up leads that they get. You'll make the most money from any leads that you generate if you follow up each lead upwards of 15 times, because that's just what it takes. Until they tell you to F off, you follow up. Any good salesperson worth their salt will tell you this. Okay, remarketing is the same exact thing. You remarket to them and you follow up with them so you can keep providing them more information, more value to make their decision. The higher the cost of the product or service that you're selling now, the higher the percentage of your overall ad budget should be going towards remarketing. That is, if you want to maximize the amount of profit you can make in your market and for your ad spend at any given time. The reason for this is the higher the product, service, or price costs, the longer the average sales cycle window is. That is the average amount of time it takes for a person before they enter the market and the time that they actually plunk down their money and they buy. Okay, so there's more, and for that matter, there's going to be more research done. They're not just going to go pick the first vendor and that's it, like right away, or at least as a whole. They're going to be getting multiple quotes. They're going to be researching online those companies, their reviews, their testimonials, on and on and on, versus a $20 broom. You're not going to give a shit about no testimonials. If it looks cool, you're going to buy it. Who cares? Or maybe you're going to slightly glance at it. And for that matter, when you buy the $20 broom, even if you are checking out the reviews, you're only going to be looking at checking out the company and the reviews and what other options are out there, probably for only like an hour at most. So there's not even an opportunity to remarket to somebody and convince them, brainwash them into why you're the best broom on the market, which is what remarketing is truly for. Not to remind them to buy, which is a small part of it, but it's more, how can we convince them we're the best during that window of time? And then the other general rule about remarketing is the less urgent of purchase, the higher the percentage of money that you should be spending on the remarketing as a whole, as a total of your ad budget. If it's an urgent purchase, you should be spending very little on remarketing. Why? Because the time, that window of time that a person's evaluating their purchase is much smaller. So there's less opportunities to remarket to them. Therefore, you need less percentage of your budget because you can only show an ad to somebody so many times in that window of time, if you will, and before they get burnt out or pissed off or whatever. And for that matter, if it's like an emergency service, like a broken toilet service, you may spend 0% on remarketing. In that particular case, you wouldn't spend anything. Now, if you have a broken sewer line, which is a bigger purchase, then you would start to do remarketing. Same business, same plumbing business, just not for every type of customer. So that is something else to consider when you're talking about remarketing and deciding what percentage of your ad budget you should spend on remarketing itself. All right? Now, before I get into some of these other points here about how to actually do your remarketing so you get the return every time, because so many people get this wrong. They don't have the first clue about remarketing, how to do it right. First of all, people don't even know what it is. Second of all, if they do it, they just beat you over the damn head with the same message over and over and over again. You ready to buy now? No, how about now? No, how about now? No, how about now? It just contributes to what people feel about advertising, which is they hate it. Because people are so damn lazy, they cannot be bothered to think about what the consumer actually would want to see because they don't want to do it. They're just big hypocrites at the end of the day. Once you understand, though, what you would like to see from companies that you potentially would like to work with, then you can start making money. And you also understand how to measure it correctly, which I'm going to talk about. Before I talk about those things, though, ultimately, if you want to know in detail on each one of these points that I'm talking about how to really crush it with your remarketing, watch some of my other videos on my channel. You can search for those on my channel homepage in the search bar. You can search for remarketing as a keyword, and you'll find dozens of videos just on remarketing by itself, where I go into super, detail on the individual points I'm talking about here. And then with that, you should subscribe because I'm coming out with really good information on remarketing and other ways to get the right traffic to your site so that you build up the right remarketing audience, and you can ultimately become a millionaire running ads for your business, as we've turned multiple people into at our firm, starting completely from scratch, just understanding the fundamentals of how to scale up an ad campaign online. So if you haven't subscribed yet, you should, because the information you're going to get on this channel is better than what you're going to find on other channels, because it's coming from somebody who's a real ad expert in the weeds doing work on ad strategy and testing every day as my sole job, 40 hours a week. And I share what is working on the weekends. So I'm active, in the weeds doing the work, and therefore you're getting real advice. Furthermore, by the way, I've got a great blog on my site at guaranteedppc.com/blog. The blog has my strategies. They're laid out for you to be able to see that we use to guarantee results for our clients, step by step, with screenshots, everything you would need to use them. So if you really like this channel, you should definitely go check that blog out as well. If you have any questions about, by the way, as I'm going through this, about anything I'm covering here, or any ad related question for that matter, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel, usually within 24 hours time. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Hey, you're helping our channel grow just by being here in the first place. I owe it to you. So with that said, the other things to know about remarketing here, to know what you should be investing in it and how to do it, is remarketing should be everywhere, not just on Facebook, like many people think. There's a lot of people that understand when you advertise on Facebook, you do remarketing. You're talking about Google ads. For some reason, people just have amnesia. They're like, remarketing? What? They just don't understand it. And for that matter, if you really want to do remarketing right, you do it as many places as you possibly can. You run Google Display Network ads. You run YouTube ads. You run demand gen ads. You run Facebook ads. You do email remarketing. You do Taboola remarketing. You do every place, Twitter remarketing, LinkedIn remarketing. Every single place you can do remarketing, you do it. Why? Because people are going to think you're a super trustworthy, authoritative company when they see your ads everywhere. The average consumer doesn't understand how remarketing works, and you could throw a little bit of money at something and basically just appear everywhere on the internet. If you're evaluating, let's say, hypothetically, that 10 roofers, how do I know, I'm trying to decide which roofer to put this new roof on my house that I need. Who are you going to go with? The guy that had the good sales pitch, or somebody who's clearly all over the internet with all these different videos and banner ads and everything else talking about what look into when you're buying a roof and how not to get ripped off, and the new trends out in the roofing space that helping consumers save money, and you're just educating the shit out of them. And they see that for weeks and weeks while they're looking over all these quotes. And then therefore the logo that's tied to the ad, who do you going to think is the best one in your market when that happens? I mean, ultimately, people, they buy on price and they buy on trust. Well, if they're not buying on price, how do you think they're going to trust if you've done that and nobody else has done any kind of follow-up with them whatsoever? You're going to win it half the time. It's not even to be disputed. It works every time when you do it. So you run your ads everywhere because that's the way you impress your users the most. They don't understand for an extra, you paid $10 to get them to your site, and for $1 extra, you can have your ad show up 30 more times for them over the next 2 weeks on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on this place and 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 this place. And they just think you're the hugest company in the area, which you could be the smallest one. Anybody can afford to do this. Next thing in the list here to mention is you want 5 to 15 different approaches with your remarketing. So if people do remarketing, what do? They show the product that the person was looking at on your website. And then they show it to them again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And people get entirely pissed off at that approach. It's, I will admit, better than nothing. Absolutely, it's better than nothing. But it's like barely better than nothing at the end of the day. All that does is it makes the person remember what they were looking at, and then that's it. If somebody left before buying, it's because they damn well don't know that your product is the best for them. So why don't you actually take the opportunity you have with these remarketing ads and actually explain to them why it's the best? And people, I know they don't do this because they think, well, my website has that information. If they wanted it, they would just go to my website. And the reality is, when they go to your website, they spent a minute or two there and they forgot completely about everything that was there the minute they left and they got on another person's website. Frankly, that's the way that it is. Things don't work the way that you assume they work. So what you want to do is you want to figure out first all the things that make people buy or that they care about in your market. In the roofing space, people want to know about warranties. They want to know, how to buy, therefore you can market buyer's guides to them. They want to know your testimonials. They want to know your reviews. They want to know how long you've been in business. They want to know, are you BBB A+ rated? And what you do is you put these into individual unique ads or rotate it out for the user as they're trying to decide who to go do business with. And you tell them a little story with these ads, and they ultimately come to the conclusion that you're the biggest, most trustworthy company in the area once they've seen them all over the next 2 weeks after they've been to your site. And each ad drives people back to if you're going to do it right, that is, not half-ass it, to a page on your website that reinforces the point on the ad. So if an ad says you're A+ BBB rated, you drive them to a page on your site that says that. If you have an ad that says you've been in business since 2001, you drive them to your About Us page that talks about that. Because when they click on the ad, they don't want to see your damn homepage. What's the point of that? It's disappointing to them. By the way, the reason why remarketing works is because every single time that they come back to your site, they're more likely to buy. That's the reality. That's the facts. What you're really trying to do with your remarketing is just come up with excuses to get them back to the site as many times as you can, because that's going to increase the likelihood they do business with you the more times they click. You also, by the way, increase the likelihood they're going to do business with you every time they read your ad and are impressed on top of it, even if they don't click through, which is half the value of your remarketing, by the way. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a second. But you come out with unique ads, and then you drive people back to unique pages on your site that go further in on those points. That's an extremely effective model to do business online. You find somebody in market for your product, you drive them to your site, and then you come up with a 10, 15 ad sequence to follow it up that tells them all the things that they would want to know and tells them until it's drilled into their head so freaking far that they can't possibly imagine you're not the best company in the area. And for products, it's the same but different. You're going to have, for me, when I'm doing it, I'm going to go read all my competitors' reviews and I'm going to write all the stuff that people hate about my competitor's product. And then my ad's going to say, does not itch, or keeps you cool when you're sleeping, does not bend, or whatever I need to say. But I'm not just randomly coming up with stuff. I'm seeing what people want. And if my product, it applies to my product, I'm going to say it on an ad. And then I'm going to drive them to a custom blog post that shows the product doesn't bend. Nobody does this. Less than 1% of people do this, and therefore it's wide open for you in your space to do it. All the big e-commerce brands that have blown up, they understand exactly what I'm telling you here. Small business owners don't have a clue about it. With that said, that's kind of like the formula. And then you don't just want banner ads. Don't stop there. Not just static banner ads. Come up with some animated banner ads. Come up with some video ads. Do a mix. Why? Because all the variety is going to increase your conversion rates. I know because I've been doing this over a decade now. So there's that. And then with that said, now the main reason why people don't do remarketing, other than they don't see their competitors doing it, so they don't think they need to, is they don't see the value in it directly. Okay? They understand, maybe slightly, that remarketing ads could maybe get someone to buy, but what they expect is somebody to see a remarketing ad, click on it right away, click through, buy, and that's it. If the person did not do exactly that, the ad was worthless. Which, if that's the case, by the way, then every single person who runs a TV ad or billboard ad or anything like this are just complete freaking morons, and they're wasting all their money, and that's that. The reality is, showing an ad to somebody in market for your product or service will increase the likelihood of them buying your product or service. It's just a matter of how much. Okay? So, where people go wrong is, because other online ads do this, so why can't remarketing do it? I can see with my Google ads if somebody clicks through the ad and buys it, and I know if it works or not. Remarketing, oh man, my ROAS or ROI on my display campaigns, less than 10% of my search campaign. But they don't realize when somebody sees an ad with a customer testimonial on it, that's not going to compel nobody to click through and buy right then. What it does do is it gets somebody to say, I like that company. I'm going to remember them later on when I go ahead and make my decision on which roofer I'm going to select. And then when they see another one the next day, they're going to say, wow, this company really is something. And what it's basically like is you have a glass. And assuming your glass gets to the top, your customer satisfied enough to make a purchase with you. Each ad that they see fills the glass up a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. It's a process that you're taking the consumer through in order to get them to buy. So to say, again, good salespeople that are worth their salt know this. They know it's not like that. You talk to somebody, they're not ready to buy. You follow up with them later, a little bit more talk with them, it makes them more likely to buy. The more times you can follow up with them, the more likely they are to buy. This is the same exact thing. With that said, and back to the issue with the tracking, because they can't see nobody click through the ad and immediately buy, they just think it's worthless. When half the value of the ads or more is them seeing the ad, being influenced by the ad subconsciously, and then therefore the day that they make the purchase, when they get paid, when they talk to their wife or husband or whatever, they're now more statistically likely to do business with you because they saw that ad in sequence than they were without it. Which is what it ultimately then does, is it gets that traffic that you paid good money to get to your site to convert into a sale at a higher rate. So it in itself isn't a channel. You shouldn't be thinking about remarketing as an individual channel. It's a tool to get first click traffic to your site to pay off. It gets this to convert. And it works together as a package. So with that, you shouldn't be looking at individual ads and saying, oh, that ad doesn't get a return. Oh, that one does. You can do that, by the way. You could actually see an ad get an immediate return for you if you got an ad that advertises a special offer that's limited time, and that's it. So for instance, we sold house paint. The remarketing ads that we have out of all the ads in our sequence, one of them says, we're offering a $50 off discount for March only. Get it while it's hot. And that will actually get clicked through and buy, and our return on investment on that campaign is as good as our search campaigns that are slightly less. That's because they know they have to jump on this right now or they're not getting it. Not only that, but because we were remarketing to them, they already know about our product. They know that they're contemplating buying it. And this is just the one last thing that tipped them over the edge. It wasn't the one ad that got them to buy. It was the combination of the ads that got them to buy. And that's just the one that causes them to, it's the last in the sequence that actually gets them to buy. And for that matter, you should do that same thing. You should be having ads that say why you're better, why it's more higher quality, why it's more powerful, why it's better than your competition's option. And then at the end of that sequence, you have an ad that says, it's like, I call it the cleanup ad. We're offering 25% off for St. Patrick's Day. And so if you use code St. Patrick's 25, you'll get 25% off. And people will click through that ad because they're already on the fence about buying. And that just tips them over the final edge. And it does it because people love to procrastinate. They love to just say, I'll do things later. So when you give them a reason not to do something later, you're actually going to get much higher sales than if you didn't do that, because people will have good intentions to buy from you on payday or what have you when I get that money. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that day never comes because they forget, they blow their wad on something else, and you never get the sale. Versus if you would have just given them a damn discount as a part of your remarketing sequence, you would have captured that sale while they're still haven't bought from the competitor yet, essentially. Or you sniped it away from a competitor, if you want to look at it that way. For that matter, by the way, a lot of this stuff, I know you're probably shaking your head like, Corey, how do you have the time to do this? This is so much work. Oh, I cannot do this. I have a business to run. If you are like this, then you pay somebody to do it, because I can tell you you're going to make half as many sales at your company with your advertising budget when you have no remarketing, or remarketing that doesn't even come close to touching what I just described as far as a sequence to do remarketing with. Okay, you can stick your head in the sand and say, no, you're wrong. That can't be. Nobody buys from a remarketing ad, and that's fine. If somebody comes into your market and does it, they're going to, clean your clock, basically. And you better hope that I'm never in your market doing that, because you're going to get crushed when that starts happening. It has such a big impact on the user when you do this effectively and set it up the way that I said. But with that said, all you got to do to get it done is just reach out to our agency and we'll do it for you. It will guarantee you results. That we know it works. You want us to do it, we'll take our fee once the initial sales come in. We aren't cheap. We don't take on just any client. You got to have a great product or service to market, but you want to see if we can do it. Reach out to me at my firm at guaranteedppc.com. I'll have a conversation with you about it and tell you what we can guarantee in terms of hard sales itself or leads, depending on what you're doing. And furthermore, though, we also, if you don't like working with an ad agency, you can also buy our template for your market. If we've worked in your niche market before, we could sell you our winning ads and landing pages that work for your market and campaign templates, and just copy paste those into your ad account, and therefore get the same results we've gotten in your market and your niche in a different city, state, or country, and get them for yourself. And we can tell you the results you're going to get with it up front because we've already ran ads in your market before. We roughly know what it will do. I mean, obviously city to city, the results vary some, but not a lot. Not a whole lot anyway. So if you're interested in that, you can also reach out to me at my firm at guaranteedppc.com. We also, by the way, offer coaching as well. If you want a 30-minute coaching session where I tell you physically what you're stuck on that's causing you from not being able to get to the next level with your revenue on your account and at the same ROI you have now that you need, reach out to me for a 30-minute coaching session. I'll go over all your stuff, your sales process, your copy on your website, your website design, all of it, and tell you what is the bottleneck. A lot of you guys, you focus way too much on your ads, and a lot of times it's the sales process, it's the back end. Something else is screwed up that's stopping you from getting your ads to actually work. And once that's fixed, your ads will just start scaling. So if you're interested in that, you can also reach out to me at my firm as well. I mean, we got guys reaching out, and everyone that reaches out to me and I do coaching with, they're coming back for more coaching calls because the information is so valuable to them. Ultimately here, because you're not going to, with the ads that I'm talking about, where you use ads in sequence to build confidence in your brand and your product or service, you need both to actually sell to somebody. You're not going to see a direct return on investment from it, from people actually physically clicking through the ad and then buying, unless it's one of those cleanup ads I talked about before. So how do you know it works? This is actually very simple. You use something called the marketing efficiency ratio method of telling what your return on investment is, which is you find a ratio of total sales in your company to ad spend that you're willing to commit. Once you've done that, okay, you're going to carve out, let's say 10% of your ad budget overall for your marketing. Then you're going to set up all your ads like I talked about. You'll still set up tracking on your remarketing campaign and use what little data you have to optimize. But to tell if it's really getting you the ROI that you want, you're going to, once you implement the remarketing, you're going to see if your total company sales go up at all compared to where the sales are at now itself, if you will. And you're going to do it, and then you're going to wait 90 days, and you're going to see if your sales over the next 90 days are higher than the previous 90 days. If they are, then you know the remarketing did it. Or you'll do a year-over-year analysis comparing quarter two this year versus quarter two last year if you're in a seasonal business. But that's primarily how you do it. And if that isn't convincing enough for you, you can take an extra step and you can actually do let's say you're targeting customers nationally in the US. you could take the whole West Coast or western part of the US, ultimately have the remarketing ads only show up for them. And then 90 days later, see if your sales went up in the western half of the US, and then they did, and see if they didn't go up that amount in the eastern half or stayed where they're at. And then you should know for sure that the remarketing that I'm telling you to do here worked and that you want to keep doing it. And then for that matter, the last step in this process is you play with the ratio itself. So once you've done that, sometimes 10% of your spend in remarketing is the way to maximize return on an ad spend that you have for your whatever your ad budget is at the time. Sometimes it's 15, sometimes it's 20, sometimes it's even 30%. We've had many times where we spent 30% on just remarketing. You could try going from 10 to 20, see if your sales overall at your company have went up and that your ratio of sales to ad spend is improved. If it has, if increasing your marketing spend from 10% of your marketing or advertising budget to 15, then try going from 15 to 20 and then 20 to 25 until you max it out. And that's how you you optimize your advertising budget for the maximum amount of profit you can by finding the actual sweet spot on what amount of money that you should be spending on your remarketing portion of your ad budget overall. So that's your last kind of part of the process to optimize. For the most part, though, I will tell you, the more you put into your remarketing sequence, the better your return is going to be on your ad spend as a whole. I mean, there's a point where it is overkill, but it's usually, you're way below that threshold for 98% of you guys doing remarketing. If you go to our website, I've got like 20, 30 different remarketing ads going on for anybody who gets to our site. We have a dozen videos alone or more. Then we have a dozen different banner ads and on and on. So if you want to see how it's done, go to my website. You'll get not bombarded, but you'll see your ads. And my ads for a long time, I do it for a year and a half because it takes a long time for people to decide to use a PPC agency. Things have to typically get pretty bad before someone decides to buy. So, which is why I do it, which in your case, that might be the case too. And for that matter, you should, when you are optimizing your percentage of spend, you should optimize for different lengths of time that you run the ads. Maybe you'll make the most money with a 30-day cookie window on your remarketing. Maybe it'll be 180 day. Maybe it'll be a year. With Google, you can do up to a year and a half technically itself. So you can do up to a year and a half after somebody gets to your site, for them to see a video remarketing ad on YouTube, a banner ad on a different website, like a weather website or whatever. What you'll find is if you start out with making remarketing ads, that'll increase your return after 90 days. Then you add another 3, it'll increase it even more. And you just keep doing that until you've maxed everything out in terms of your return itself as well. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about this. That's how you find the ideal percentage to spend on your remarketing. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you on the next one.
Remember when I said remarketing was important during this video? Well, this video here tells you how to do it.